Get full episodes of The Damage Report as a podcast on iTunes and Android, and you can watch the live show every weekday on YouTube TV. I've been frustrated with the conversation about climate change. Can we actually address the threat of climate change? And I feel very often like the counter argument to those who are pushing for a Green New Deal or something like that is an economic argument that these energy sources, renewable sources are still too expensive. We just need coal, we need natural gas, and it'll cost too much in economic activity to do anything about it. And I feel like a lot of those talking points are decades out of date. These are people who have not kept up with actual evolution in the price of things. So let's talk about coal. Is coal actually better and cheaper than solar energy? That's what we assume, that's what we hear. Well, financial think tank Carbon Tracker analyzed the profitability of 6,685 different coal plants worldwide. That's 95% of all of the capacity for coal electricity generation in the entire world. And they found that even as prices are reaching record highs, 42% of coal capacity is already unprofitable. It is already operating at a loss worldwide. And they estimate that by 2030, the proportion of unprofitable coal will be likely to exceed 70%. So the reason that is likely to grow is that over time, we're seeing every single year solar generation of power is getting cheaper and cheaper per megawatt. They're estimating some subsidies potentially to renewable energy. I would not count on that in our world, but it would be great if it did happen. So you already right now, even if none of that happens, no technological innovation, no subsidies from governments worldwide for renewable energy generation, 42% of coal is already operating at a loss. It is already a waste of money with every megawatt that it produces.
I feel like you just have to look at, the C word country, which is China, that we can never talk about, right? But China is a country that truly does not care about emissions. Truly does not. It is the worst of a state-run government and the worst of a capitalist government all wrapped into one. And they are moving toward electric power and solar power. Because why? They like a deal. It's a good, I say that as a half Chinese woman. I understand China.
You have half immunity.
I have half immunity from this semi-problematic statement that China's gonna go to wherever it's economically the most viable, and they themselves are moving, of course, away from dirty coal or clean, beautiful coal. And it makes absolute sense. Also, I think one thing that, and of course, whenever you're arguing with someone who is like a free market diehard, it's very difficult to bring this into the mix. But you don't have an economy in a vacuum. And climate change is a perfect example of that. You cannot make all of, the Koch brothers, what do you think they made their money? Well, by dumping like some insane amount of toxic waste into rivers and streams, et cetera. Well, they've paid off certain settlements from that, but other settlements they've evaded. So the money comes from somewhere, and the money we're seeing now in the ways that we're experiencing horrible effects of climate change in the polluted rivers, in polluted streams, in polluted lakes, like that has a cost. It's just that Mother Nature hands us the bill via earthquakes. And via hurricanes and earthquakes in terms of fracking.
Yeah, that's true. It sounds crazy, but you're actually right.
Right, but Mother Nature has a different way of making us pay, and like actually we should monetize it. And I mean, and this is the whole thing with carbon trading and essentially what has been floated in countries like Brazil, right? Although now they've taken a right weird shift, which is, hey, pay us not to cut down these trees. And honestly, I think that's great. Yeah, you should get money for saving those trees. And I think we need to be able to kind of think about, nature in terms of like putting a monetary value on it.
Yeah, so what you're talking about there is what I call like shadow subsidies. It's the subsidies that our government and we pay every day that we don't even know about. And we're focusing today on climate change, but of course pollution is also incredibly important, whether it's water being contaminated by coal ash being dumped into lakes in Detroit and things like that, or if it's just air pollution that causes respiratory disease that kills hundreds of thousands of people every single year. Those are all costs that we pay. We don't know that we're paying it when we fill up our car, but we are actually paying it.
But because we can't quantify quantify it, it's like you sort of lose the economic argument is still super in a vacuum. We should be taking those things into account when we talk about the effects that the fossil fuel industry has had and the effects of climate change and pollution.
Yeah. The thing is, there's like I don't know if you've done any like intro philosophy courses in college or whatever, but they love to do these like philosophical games. Like if you had a button and you could press the button and get $1 million, but one random person in the world dies, would you press the button? You won't know who it is, you'll never find out, would you press the button? And that's like a hypothetical, but there's like CEO of ExxonMobil is like,
boardrooms across the world are just like, where's more buttons? Bring in more buttons.
And you'll
How
never
many more
know.
people can I kill?
Exactly, you'll never be able to trace one barrel of oil to one death from respiratory illness, but that is happening every single day. As I'm talking right now, it is happening. And the thing is, like, I'm glad that Carbon Tracker did this analysis. We need to know that. So the next time you hear that coal is, it's just too good of a deal. We can't afford to generate electricity from the sun. Understand that that is already ridiculous, and every single year it will get more and more ridiculous.
And coal country knows that, and it's really disingenuous to pretend. And it's actually like, using as Trump always does, right? Using coal miners, using veterans, using any group as essentially props for some non-existent, nostalgic, whatever American patriotism is, and supposedly that's coal. We have to love coal if we're patriotic, and even coal country and coal miners know those jobs aren't coming back. You have to give them alternatives. So what are his alternatives? He doesn't have any.
No, well, he has something. So why don't we jump ahead to this? Yeah, really fast, you mentioned like this tradition of coal, like, and Trump will say, hey, the coal jobs, I'm gonna dig coal, because that's how you dig coal. When I think of the tradition of coal in the US, it's like, man, economically, things were so hard that people had to literally go into coal mines and crawl around and cake their lungs and their eyes in coal dust and die prematurely.
And
man, wasn't it
have
terrible?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, wasn't it awful that we had to do that? Thank God we now have other industries that people get. Like, it would be horrible if we were to consign multiple future generations to still crawling on their knees. I've crawled on my knees in a coal mine. It ain't fun, okay? We shouldn't still be doing that. Thank you very much for watching this clip from The Damage Report. If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and ring the bell on YouTube to get notifications of our new videos. And of course, you can catch the full Damage Report live every weekday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific on TYT Network on YouTube TV.